Meteorologist John Feldt here. This is the Weekly Water Outlook, the National Edition, October 13th, 2013. Let's start off with a surface map here. I want to point out some of the key parameters we're looking at as we start the week. We have a front pushing to the east that's going to stall out over the southern U.S. This is some very deep moisture here, and it's indicated in green coming off the Gulf, and that's going to feed into this stalled front, and it's going to produce a chance of very heavy rain over the south, mainly early this week. This front will be pushing off to the east. It's going to be ushering in some cooler weather, but I'm going to be talking about a chance of heavy rain over the upper Midwest. Now, from time to time, I talk about this deep-seated moisture, and I wanted to point out, if you track these clouds, they're coming in from the Pacific. And when you have the atmosphere being loaded with precipitation at low levels from the Gulf, mid and upper levels from the Pacific, that's when you get that threat of more widespread heavy rainfall. And I think that's a setup for the potential for some heavy rainfall over the south early this week. Now, before I get to that, let's look at the last 7 days rainfall across the nation. Heaviest rain was with a system that pushed off the Atlantic coast. It really enhanced the rain in the mid-Atlantic states. You can see some very heavy rain in that region, reds and even purple, so over 5 inches of rain in spots. Pockets of heavy rain, Texas and the upper Midwest, but really with the exception of the mid-Atlantic states, it was a quiet week across the nation. And you can see that by looking at the percent of normal precipitation. Pretty widespread below normal rainfall, that's the area in red, but you can see upper Midwest, mid-Atlantic, and then scattered areas over Texas of enhanced rainfall with maybe 4 times normal for the week. So here's the current steering winds, and this time of year I'm really looking at wind energy aloft, and that's the areas in yellow and shaded in that darker red, to produce the upper atmospheric energy to provide precipitation. And a large part of the area is not shaded in any color here over the southeast U.S., and without that energy or an inflow of moisture, it looks like a pretty quiet type pattern. I will be talking about that as well. So here's that pocket of energy that I'm watching this week. This pocket of energy is going to break off into 2 sections, one moving to the northeast, one moving down into the south, and those will be the focus of precipitation this week. Other than that, it's going to be a very quiet week. So it's going to be this area of energy breaking off and pushing in 2 different directions that'll produce the rainfall. Past that, as we get into the latter part of October, I wanted to point out we have a fairly significant trend change coming up. Look at all these blue dashed lines. When we get a packing of these dashed lines, either red or blue, it tells us some indications of which way the weather will be going. In this case, these areas in blue are saying that the jet stream will be dipping unusually far south. These are negative anomalies, and that's going to bring in cold or cool, unusually cool weather to a large part of the Midwest, as well as quiet conditions to a large part of the U.S. Now, once again, I'm going to keep on covering tropics right through the end of the season. Very quiet. Looks to me like really one of the main causes of this quiet weather has been an intrusion of dry air in mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, and that's really been over the development areas of the Atlantic all season long, and I think that's not going to change. So really not much expected at all the rest of the season, but I will be keeping an eye on it. So here's the rainfall forecast. I did want to show the areas of rain. I mentioned those 2 bands of rain, the one breaking out and heading up over the upper Midwest, more modest rain, and then a widespread rain supported by that upper loading of mid-atmospheric moisture over the south, particularly over Texas, southeast Oklahoma, parts of Louisiana. Large areas of dry pressure or dry weather over the southeast U.S., over the far west, and right over here over the large part of the Midwest as well. Now, if I look a little bit further ahead, this is late into October. This is a cumulative rainfall image. And keep in mind that this is both these events here are from this week. But look at the large area here, very large area, light green and even the darker green. Very light amounts of rain over a broad part of the nation. No rain whatsoever over the west. So really, it looks like a very quiet pattern that we're getting into, other than the heavy rain this week in those 2 parts of the nation I mentioned. And these are those areas right here where there is the possibility of heavy rain and maybe even some snow in the colder air. Now, the outlook for the 20th through the 26th of October, I wanted to sort of point this out again. Here's that area of below normal temperatures centered over Wisconsin, extending into the central and eastern Midwest, and then below normal precipitation over a very broad area of the U.S. So the takeaway points: heavy rain over the southern U.S., modest rain over the upper Midwest, otherwise dry, and a cool and dry pattern setting up that will head from the middle part of the month into the latter part of October. Thank you for listening to this week's Outlook. I'm working on my winter outlook. I'll have that out later this week or next week. Thank you for listening.